We're here this morning or this afternoon to affirm something that's already been true for some time. That Eshu Martin has been serving the Victoria area as a temple priest. And recently, Eshu has joined an association with my temple in Seattle, Daibaizan Chobo Zenji, and more specifically with the lineage as it's been represented and handed off to me. And what exactly does that mean? I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the ceremony. But I wanted to say to everyone, welcome. And I also wanted to say, don't be fooled by the pretty robes. It's simply an ordinary human being. And Eshu is going to get some very nice robes too, and still he'll be an ordinary human being. And in fact, the Rinzai Zen ideal is to totally transcend all kinds of attachment to our ego identity that gets puffed up by rank and post and position and stature of authority. Doesn't mean that we can't put on pretty robes. Neither should it mean that we can't put on grubby jeans and work in the garden or clean a toilet. Whatever we happen to be in front of us, if it's nice clothes, fine. If it's grungy clothes, fine. If there's a grungy task, grungy clothes. And if there's a high ceremony task, well then some fancier clothes. But the ideal again is that we are fellow human beings, fellow travelers on this planet, brothers and sisters in the way, the flow of, the very flow and unfolding of the universe. We're all a part of it. None of us is more a part of it than somebody else. It's also true that we wear fancy robes and have fancy fans and such to attract you. And look, you've all come. And it is to represent, just as the icon of the historical Buddha in a beautiful pose is a mirror of our own potential to awaken to our deepest nature, to that really kind of grand aspect within all of us, to be fully loving beings, because we've come to realize that all so-called beings are seamless with one another. And in that realization, we become much closer and more deeply aware of our interconnectedness and interdependence than we would be of our own family or our brothers and sisters. And it's at that deep well of awareness that the pretty clothes represent. They represent a mirror of that potential for all of us to become realized or aware of this deep interconnectedness and this deep love for one another, for all creatures, great and small, animate and inanimate. In psychology, we learn that there are two principal emotions, fear and love. And on the fear side of things it's informed by our instincts for survival. And in human beings, it appears as the need to have security, to have enough, and maybe a little more. And it also leads to all kinds of greed and avarice and poor behavior towards one another out of fear of lack of security or not having enough and wanting to have more. So if we could learn, and it's a learning, how to transcend our fear, there's only one emotion really that's left, and that's love. It's not that love isn't already there. It's not like love is something that needs to be attained. Awakening is not something that needs to be attained. It's something that you want to become aware of. This deep love and interconnected interconnectedness and interdependence of all beings. So the practice of Zazen and Zen training, and I think all of the great spiritual traditions, is to help us get beyond our fear, beyond our attachment to our separate sense of identity, beyond our instincts for survival, beyond the sort of primitive wounded animal that's also inside of us, and learn how to calm that inner beast, if you will, and to reach deeper into our nature. That too is part of our nature. This fear is a part of our nature. It's not, we can't deny it. When we deny it, we're in trouble. But if we learn how to accept it and go deeper than that fear, then we're much more likely to be balanced by love rather than fear, and to act that way in the world, and that's a good thing. This world needs it. So these robes that I'm wearing and that Eshu is going to be wearing are just a reflection of that deeper potential realized in us. And it's an intention to be love-based rather than fear-based. And the robes attract, you say, yes, that's what I want. And so if you're coming because you say, yes, that's what I want to be, I want to be love-based instead of fear-based, good, then it's the proper attraction of the robes. But don't be fooled that we're anything more than just a fellow traveler of the way. So let me take my seat. And if you'll turn to your program to something called the Zazen Wasan, that's the next chant. I'm going to read a little bit of that in English so that we know what we're chanting. We're chanting it in Japanese, actually old ancient Japanese, because the particular lineage that our Zen represents comes out of the what's called the Hakuin Rinzai line. Hakuin was a Zen priest in the, let's see, when was Hakuin? Hakuin lived between 1686 and 1769. So he was principally an 18th century Japanese man who revitalized Rinzai Zen school in Japan, and he wrote these words. I'm going to read the first two paragraphs. It goes on from this, but just listen to this English translation. Sentient beings are primarily all Buddhas. We could really say sentient beings are already primarily Buddhas. It is like ice and water. Apart from water, no ice can exist. Apart from sentient beings, no Buddhas can be found. Not knowing how near the truth is, we seek it far away. We seek it outside of ourselves. What a pity. We are like a person who, in the midst of water, cries and thirsts so imploringly. We are like a child of a wealthy person who worries about having enough money. At this moment, this is the last paragraph, at this moment, what more need we seek? As the truth eternally reveals itself, this very place is the lotus land of purity. This very body is the body of the Buddha. This very place is the land of love. This very body is the body of a loving, caring, compassionate human being, which is you and me. Allowing ourselves to dip deeply into that truth, what more need we seek? So we're going to do this in honor of Hakuin. These are his words, and we're going to do it in the language as it existed in the 18th century. It doesn't make much sense to anyone else, but this is in honor of Hakuin in our school that we chanted in the original verse. Hai. Zazen back on that first page for a moment, the reason why we chanted and started the ceremony with something called the Heart Sutra is because the Heart Sutra is a condensation of Mahayana Buddhist teaching into one relatively short verse. And it's even condensed more in the very last line, which reads, let's see, gyate, gyate, hara gyate, harazo gyate, boji sovaka hanya shingyo. A rough translation would be that when your heart is open, you see everything differentially, as in the myriad differences between one thing and another. But at the same time, when your eyes and your heart are really open, you see the underlying interconnectedness of all beings, great and small, animate and inanimate. When you see that underlying force that has no form, let alone a name, we say that that unifying reality is prior to heaven and earth. It has no form, let alone a name, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, and it unites and animates us all. That's what this verse is all about, is that underlying, interconnecting, animating force or reality that manifests in us as love, throughout the universe as love. And that's a condensation of many great sutras that are in the Mahayana school of Buddhism. Mahayana school is of which Zen is a part, is China, Southeast Asia, and Korea, Japan, and as it's come to the West. And then the somewhat older, and some would say more original Buddhism, which concentrates more on the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, is in Sri Lanka and Thailand and India, Burma, and that's the other major school. But Zen is in the Mahayana school, and the key Mahayana Sutra that is a condensation of the Buddhist canon for the Mahayana school is the Heart Sutra, so that's why we did that. Then we did the Song of Zazen, which is related to our particular lineage as it comes through Japan. With those two verses said, I'll now invite Eshu to come up and sit before me. And he will, beginning on page 3, lead us in some English verses followed by the traditional verses that you would say whenever you do jukai or you get a raksu of some sort where you've become a lay Buddhist or a even lay ordained, is when you recognize that you are a Buddhist, you want to say these things. And Eshu is reaffirming these same vows that anyone would be taking when they affirm themselves as a follower of the Buddhist way, which means the way of awakening, the way of compassion, the way of love. Buddha just is of course just the word that means awakened one. Awakened to what? Awakened to that deeper love within all of us, and working to allow that to be the principal thing that is manifested in our daily life. So, would you please lead us in the confessions of self-centered behavior?
In the past I have caused much harm. My greed, anger, and folly arise from the beginningless past, yet they spring from this body, this mouth, and this mind. I alone am responsible for the suffering they have brought, and I hereby renounce and relinquish them all. Now the traditional verse. Sangye man Yakuzo Sho Akuno Nai
And then we'll do the commandments of the 7 Buddhas in the traditional verse. Someone once asked a Zen priest, what is the deep teaching of the awakened ones? And the person said, well, not to work, not to cause harm, to be a servant to what's good and best for the common good, to cultivate one's own purity so that it might be a reflection to others to cultivate theirs, and that this is the deep teaching of the awakened ones. And the person asking the question said, well, doesn't everybody know that? And the priest said, yes, but knowing it and living it are 2 different things. So we work at it. So would you lead us, and by the way, it's the commandments of the 7 Buddhas, because it means not just the historical Buddhas, but the mythological Buddhas before the historical Buddha and the Maitreya, the mythological Buddha to come. From time to time, of course, there are great prophets who reflect for us our true and deep potential. And it doesn't matter what religion, I think it does kind of come down to these commandments.
I shall not cause harm of any kind. I will live in and be a servant to all that is good. I shall cultivate the purity that is our nature. This is the full teaching of the awakened ones.
And traditional verse.
Shichi butsu tsukai no geisho.
Maku maku sa shu zen muryo jijo go ize sho butsu kyo sho. Maku maku sa shu zen muryo jijo go ize sho butsu kyo sho. Maku maku sa shu zen muryo jijo go ize sho butsu kyo.
And then where Eshu is going to lead us in the 3 places of refuge, which are the 3 treasures in Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. And they are truly 3 treasures if they are the following: that there is this potential within all of us to wake up fully, or primarily, principally, to the deep love that is already within us all, and to allow that to actualize itself, that potential to actualize itself in our ordinary everyday lives, is what Buddha is. And if that love is down there, that's a treasure, and we give ourselves to it. And sometimes it's, in some ways in Buddhism you might see, take refuge in the Buddha, but instead we're giving ourselves to this real treasure of love and awakening that's within us. And then if there is an underlying reality that is prior to heaven and earth, that has no form, let alone a name, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, that is the very expanding, unfolding, animating universe itself and beyond. And if that reality is the truth, that it's an expanding universe that is unified from one point, and it's a flowering of the potential of compassion and love, then that's a heck of a treasure, and we give ourselves to that underlying flow and that expansion and that evolution. And then the Sangha, if it's true that we're all interconnected and interdependent and not really islands, and that the greatest illusion of all is our sense of an ego separateness, and that idea of a separated identity is our biggest problem, and that if we could only really know that we're all in this together, all creatures great and small, rocks and trees, moon and stars, and that we're all seamlessly a part of one fabric. In the greatest sense, that's the Sangha. In the most limited sense, it's the priests and male and female who are associated with the Buddhist sect. But in the broadest sense, it means all creatures, great and small, that you realize we're all a part of one seamless fabric. If you believe that and you know that to be true in your heart, that's a tremendous treasure, and we give ourselves to that treasure. Would you lead us in the 3 places of refuge?
I give myself to the Buddha. I give myself to the Dharma. I give myself to the Sangha. The Buddha I embrace is indeed worthy of my dedication. The Dharma I accept is also worthy and without blemish. The Sangha I join is the model for harmony in the world. I am now in the Buddha. I now am in the Dharma. I now am in the Sangha.
And traditional words.
San ki kai mu ki e butsu na mu ki e ho na mu ki e so ki e butsu mu jo san ki e hori yoku san ki e so ago san ki e bukyo ki e hokyo ki e sokyo.
Next, we're going to have Eshu lead us in the 10 precepts, which are really just an expansion of the commandments of the 7 Buddhas into our everyday activities. We should understand the precepts as something that comes from our deep, loving heart or our deep, true nature. If we're in contact or communion with that deep nature and aware of it, these precepts should come out of our lips naturally, having never read them. But we're not always feeling in complete harmony or with our own depths, are we? We're often caught in our own surface reality and our surface sense of separation. And when we're caught in that surface sense of separation, we ought to have something to fall back on, to know how to live life from that loving depth. So the precepts are something to use as a mirror of the words that would naturally come to our own lips when we're in deep communion with our own true nature. And they should be used as a reference point in that way and a mirror of looking at our actions. The master is that deep, loving heart in all of us. That's the master, not the historical Buddha, not the priest or the Osho, not the Dharma heir. The master is the loving heart within each of us. And that trumps anything that can be written down. On the other hand, if it doesn't match what's written on this page, it must become suspect and be open to great doubt. So please lead us in the 10 precepts.
I will be reverential and mindful with all life. I will not kill or be ruled by violence. I will respect others' property. I will not steal. I will be conscious and loving in my relationships. I will not be ruled by lust. I will honor honesty and truth. I will not deceive. I will exercise proper care of my body and mind. I will not be gluttonous or abuse intoxicants. I will remember that silence is precious. I will not gossip or speak ill of others. I will be humble. I will not exalt myself or judge others. I will be grateful for my life. I will not covet or be directed by envy or jealousy. I will keep my mind at peace. I will not be directed by anger. I will esteem the 3 treasures, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
So I would like you to still hold this up here and look at page 7 and page 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. So we're going to go through the rest of this relatively quickly after I present Eshu with the robes, but we should have just a bit of what each of these are so that we know what we're chanting. The Daihi Shuddharani is a mystical verse so that the sounds themselves have a certain resonance that are said to draw out compassion or that loving heart from within us. So the very fact that we're making these sounds together, the togetherness of making these good vibrations helps draw forth our own deep nature. And we're going to do that before chanting this Rinzai Buddha's lineage, beginning with those butsus at the top of page 8, which are the mythological Buddhas before the historical Buddha of the Shakya clan. And then all those Sonjas are at least theoretical ancestors in the Indian tradition before what it became Zen came to China in the 5th century, and then Bodhidharma brought it from India to China, and so all those Zenjis, the first columns of Zenjis, are all the ancestors in the Chinese lineage, and then beginning with Nampo Shomyo Zenji are all the ancestors in the Japanese lineage. And what this is saying is that the people on this page that are represented, some of them are mythological, starting with the mythological Buddhas, and we're not very sure at all of the Hindu ancestors. It's too far back there. But what we're saying is that there is one unbroken line of awareness of our own deep nature. When we have something called transmission, this is not a transmission ceremony, this is a temple priest ceremony, but transmission means that we are not transmitting anything, we're realizing that we all already share a deep, loving heart. And when we become truly confident of that fact, then we have what's called transmission. Just that we all already share a deep, loving heart that knows everything we need to know on how to live a loving life. All the answers on how to live a loving life are already within us. And when we truly have the deepest possible confidence in that, we say transmission has happened. But the only thing that transmission means is that we've awakened to the fact that we all already have this loving, I would say, sage-like awareness or capacity within us. And it's already there. It's not something that has to be found or discovered. This ceremony is kind of like a halfway point to saying outwardly that Eshu has some awareness of this deep heart, enough to be able to attract and share it with others, this fact, to reflect the fact that we all share a loving, deep heart mind, and that all that we need to live a loving life is already there within us. We don't need to look outside of ourselves. And by taking these robes and name, we're conferring upon Eshu this capacity to attract and point at this loving heart. Not really to teach anything, but to point at this loving heart clearly enough, because his confidence is gaining in this fact. So I have a certificate here and new robes, which allows you to dress up like a peacock too. And the certificate will say the following things, Eshu, and I feel confident in sharing these words with you and with everyone here, that this doesn't go to your head, and it doesn't go to your heads either, but that we are conferring upon Eshu this capacity to be a mirror for that deep, loving potential, and that in being that mirror, he can point towards all of us that truth that we share this one loving heart. This says, Daibai Zan Chobo Zenji certification. This is to certify that on the 28th day of September 2013, Genjo Marinello, that's me, the abbot of Choboji, confers upon, oh, this is the new name you haven't heard yet, Ko-sen. Ko is the character for red. He looks red. He's got the red beard. He likes the red Roxu. He likes everything red. So red had to be in the name. And then Sen is the character for mountain hermit. So red mountain hermit, Ko-sen. And Eshu you already know. I think, Eshu, how do you translate it? How do you translate it?
Surpassing wisdom.
Surpassing wisdom. Baloney. The Eshu means abundant gifts from the heart rather than wisdom. Abundant gifts from the heart. And the next Shu means for real, or you can be confident of the truth of that. So, yes, Ko-sen Eshu, Carl Edward Martin, I confer upon you the titles of Dharma Teacher, Zenji, and Full Priest, Osho. This is in recognition of his sincere practice as a Rinzai Zen Buddhist monk since January 17, 1999, and his knowledge as well as his clear insight into the Dharma. The three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are witness to this proclamation. May they encourage and protect Ko-sen Eshu for his future practice. So, Eshu, I haven't known you for all that long, but long enough to know that you're sincere in your deep commitment to serve others and to live a life, a family life, and a daily life that is a reflection of that inner loving, deep capacity within all of us that's not beyond, but transcends our fear, and that you're working at it, and that you can be an example to others on how to transcend fear and let out the love. And with that in mind, I present you with Peacock. Okay, let's all stand for a moment. Now, I get to do this one magic thing too. When we got the big temple bell at Choboji, I like telling this story, the antique store who shipped it over and that we bought it from said, "Isn't this a priest thing?" And I recognized it as a hosu. This is something that Zen priests hold as a symbol of authority, and I get to hold it. And I get to wave it over this guy and all these things and temporarily remove all his delusions. Now, may it last as long as it lasts, but not too long, because our delusions are the food for the fire for our practice. So I'll remove them temporarily, but they're going to come right back, and that's okay, because you have more work, we all have more work to do to combust those delusions and to transcend, have more work to do to transcend our fear and to open our loving heart. So here they go, temporarily. Enjoy. All right. And we'll bow. And we'll exit here momentarily. Here we go. All right. And you can all be seated again, and part 2 is about to take place.